What's up, everybody? Evan here for grips.com, continuing with Project Get Me Stackin, where I teach you how to build them tall and keep them tall. Today's question is about poker etiquette, and I'm really excited to be sharing my knowledge with you guys on this one. Let's waste no time and get right into it. Evan, congrats on cashing the main event, mate. Judging from your comment after busting out, you were happy with the way you played. Great to hear, and indeed, I was. I have a question for you about poker etiquette, particularly in live games. I play online regularly, and I only engage in conversation maybe 10% of the time max. I just don't see the value in it, which is a sentiment shared by a lot of players. When I play live, mainly home games and casinos, the talk and gamesmanship at the table seems to be increasing. My specific questions. Once a hand starts, do I have to respond to a question like, how much do you have? Or can I just sit there? Is it considered bad form to ask questions and or engage in chatter mid-hand with your opponents? I have heard that it's okay to ask a player what they're holding, however, you cannot tell your opponent right or wrong what you're holding. Is this true? Which I think is definitely one of the stupidest rules of all of them. And finally, do you engage in this kind of gamesmanship? Don't get me wrong, I want to take advantage of every edge I can. However, I do not want to cross the line. Any tips you have would be appreciated, mate. Thanks, Craig, also known as Ozzy in Singers. And etiquette's something that you can go a lot of different ways on, and there are a lot of different approaches to it. So in this presentation, I'm going to cover the approaches of both kind of being the life of the party, the table captain, and also kind of keeping to yourself and just shutting everyone out and putting up your shield. Both methods have their merits, and it will be up to you to decide which method is best for you. Anyway, let's get straight into the presentation. First things first, I'm going to put a disclaimer on this video. Everywhere you go in the world, the rules are going to be slightly different. I mean, some places people make up the rules as they go, but hopefully you won't be playing in these sorts of establishments. Just be aware that what goes in Europe may not be what goes in America, may not be what goes in Australia. I'm fairly confident that the information in this video is the same worldwide, but please let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about anything. When it comes to little things like forward motion rules, oversized chip rules, that's when it's really going to be casino by casino. And if you don't know what the rules are, the smart thing to do is ask the dealer or the floor staff before the situation arises, so that way you can be prepared rather than trying to figure it out on the fly as you go. All right, on to the actual questions. The first one comes up all the time because for some reason, nobody seems to keep track of their opponent's chip counts and nobody can count a bet. How much do you have? How much is the bet? I must have heard this question over 100 times this summer. So when you're asked, it's up to you how you respond, if you respond at all. Your responsibility is to make your chips visible to your opponent with your big chips in clear sight so that they can count how many chips you have themselves. If you want to tell them, you can, but by no means are you obligated to. If the player just can't see very well or can't count past 10, then the dealer is allowed to count your chips for the opponent. So don't get offended if the dealer has to break down your beautifully built tower to figure out exactly how many chips you have. You can always rebuild them after when you win the hand, which most of the time you should be doing. All right, so when you're in a multi-way pot, the general rule is that you're not supposed to engage in table talk. I'm not sure exactly why this is. Probably that it gives an extra edge to the player not involved in the conversation. He's sort of free-rolling your attempt to gain information from your opponent while you're also giving away some information about yourself. And because it will have some impact on the actions of the players, that's probably why this rule came to be. Another possibility is that this rule was created to prevent cheaters from using table talk to team play versus their opponents more easily. They might have a secret language, they might throw some words out there that give signs to their partner what's going on with their hand, but to the unknown observer, nothing seems to be out of the ordinary. I don't see big harm in it if it's a fair game, but for your own sake, save the table talk for heads up. And in some casinos, even when it's heads up, you still can't ask questions about the hand, like what they're actually holding, or if you think they're on a draw or a made hand. But the weather, movies, women, politics, they're all fair game, so ask away. If you've already folded, don't talk about what you folded, even to other players who have already folded as well. Revealing information about what cards are out of play can have a major impact on how the other players play their hands, and it's a big no-no. Let the action go down, and once the hand is over, you can talk about it as much as you want. You know, if you take a second and really think about it, sure, it may seem funny when you fold and you would have flopped trips or maybe flopped a full house, but why do you need to tell your opponents that, or like your table mates? What's the point? We all know that some hands will hit lucky flops sometimes. It's nothing out of the ordinary, so it's not some crazy event when it happens. It's just part of the game. Now, on to things that you shouldn't do, but are technically allowed to do. You may not lose your cards or receive a penalty for any of these actions, but you may get your ass kicked depending on where you're playing, and there's a good chance you won't get invited back. The first no-no is slow rolling. For those of you who aren't familiar with slow rolling, it's when you take an unnecessarily long amount of time to turn over a winning hand, pretending that you see your opponent's cards and you're like, oh man, just kidding, I got you. Another version of slow rolling is taking a really long time to call someone all in with a sure winning hand. This is heads up, of course. You know, if you have aces and someone goes all in and there's still people act behind, you probably want to make it look like you have a bit of a tough decision before you just like fist pump those chips in the middle. Slow rolling gives your opponent a false sense of hope that they may have the best hand, and then really guts them when the truth is revealed. Now, one thing I noticed in Asia when I was playing over there is that slow rolling seems to be a part of the culture. So, if you happen to get slow rolled by a Chinaman, don't be too offended by it. It's just part of the game over there, as tilting as it is for us over here in North America. Next up is something that some of the old school road gamblers are really into, but it's not very polite, and this is angle shooting. Things like pump faking a call to gauge your opponent's reaction, or acting out of turn, or actually, I'm not going to go into the list too much of the various angle shooting activities because I don't want to give you guys bad ideas. But basically, angle shooting is doing something that is borderline within the rules to give yourself an edge at the expense of someone else. Angle shooting will give you a short time edge in the particular confrontation, but it is bad for your long run expectation as it's a great way to lose your invite to a game. Finally, we have killing the sweat, which is the least frowned upon of the three things I mentioned here, but it takes some fun out of the game. If someone's all in and you folded one or two of their outs, don't tell them. Especially if you happen to know someone's drawing dead, but they don't, keep it to yourself. Let that person maintain that little bit of excitement and hope. It's the big rush in the game after all, is the gamble and the hope that you might catch the card you need to bail you out. You don't want to be known as the party pooper, and if you're the guy who's constantly pointing out to people that they have a lower chance of winning than they hoped, you will quickly find yourself getting this label. Personally, when it comes to gamesmanship and table talk, I like to mix it up. On some tables, I'll try to be the life of the party and get everyone in a good old-fashioned gambling mood. At other tables, I'll just go about my business and won't say a word. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. When deciding what's right for you, your top consideration should be, are you more likely to extract information or betray information? Great table talkers like Daniel Negreanu and Antonio Esfandiari are so comfortable and at ease talking that they don't show much discomfort or give away information about their hand when they're engaging someone in conversation. Their friendly vibes encourage others to act the same way, but lots of these players aren't used to acting this way naturally at the table, so they will betray information about their hand without even realizing it. They will give a lot of signs as to their comfort level. So if you think you're a better table talker or want to be the table captain and be in control of the action, being an animated character definitely has its advantages. If by nature you're more reserved and quiet, then don't feel the need to play their game. Remember, the rules don't say anything about having to engage in conversation or answer someone's questions. Players like Phil Hellmuth and Phil Ivey say very little at the table and thus give away very little information in the way of mannerisms and behavioral tells. The main question is, are you more likely to gain information about your opponents and their holdings, or give away information about your own when you engage in table talk? This is what should be the determining factor in what level of gamesmanship you engage in. Now, I'm going to leave you guys with a quote on this one, because when it comes to etiquette, it's pretty straightforward. For any time you're not in a hand, it is a wise thing to be polite. Consequently, it is a stupid thing to be rude. And when it comes to during a hand, just do whatever you think will keep your edge the highest. Now, when talking about, being polite, when we're not actually involved in a hand, we have nothing at risk, we're not going to give away information about our hand, make us less likely to get paid off or more likely to get snapped off on a bluff. There are a lot of benefits to being friendly and polite, which is why outside of a hand, I would encourage you to be as friendly and polite as possible with your opponents. Here are a few of the benefits to doing so. The first one is your opponents, who are the gambling types, are more likely to give you that small, kind of seemingly insignificant action to them, like a little peel pre-flop or more peels on the flop with bottom pair that, it's just like small action, but they're not really going to do too much damage. And you welcome that little bit of extra action because your bet size should be such that they're making mistakes calling with these sorts of hands. Also, if you're friendly with your opponents, they're more likely to respect your big bets and try not to bust you out of the tournament because, hey, you're a good guy to have around. Why would they want to, ruin your day and ruin theirs a little bit by taking this awesome, fun person away from the tables? It's just not a good recipe for them. So if they're in a close spot, you're more likely to get that fold you need if, it's with a friend versus someone who just hates your guts and can't stand all the stuff you've been doing and just wants to see you gone. If you're playing in a private game, you're much more likely to be invited back if you're someone that everyone enjoys being around. And your opponents are also more likely to give you information about their thought process because they'll be more comfortable around you. They'll be more comfortable talking to you about whatever's on their mind. And usually when people are playing poker, well, poker-related thoughts are what's on their mind. Poker strategy aside, you'll find you just have a more enjoyable experience playing poker when you are enjoying the company of the people you are with. If you hate every single player at the table, odds are you're going to be miserable all night, and the only thing that will have you leaving in a good mood is booking a really big win. So, don't let your emotions be at the mercy of the deck. If you're having fun, you're more likely to play well and more likely to get the desired result that you're looking for. So, I would say be a nice guy. Be everybody's friend. It's a lot easier to do well by being everyone's friend than by being everyone's enemy. And those are my thoughts on poker etiquette. If there are any other specific questions that you guys have related to poker etiquette that I didn't cover in this video, please go ahead and throw them in the comments. And if I have any experience dealing with that sort of situation, I will be more than happy to give my insight as to what I think the correct thing to do is in that situation. Also, if you have any questions for Project Get Me Stackin and you would like to have them answered, please just send them on over to evan@grips.com with the subject line Get Me Stackin, and then hopefully I can answer your question and help you get stacking. If you're enjoying the series, if you enjoy these videos, and you're finding that they help your game, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel below so that you can be notified anytime a new video is released. And other than that, guys, please engage in conversation, chat it up in the comments, get to know each other, because the best value that you guys are going to get from these videos is getting to know the other like-minded individuals who are watching these same sort of things and trying to improve their poker game just like you are. And that is going to wrap it up for me. This has been Evan for Grips.com, saying peace.